All right, and we're back with the program. It's Gerald coming right back at you here, and we're now talking some sports cards because it's that time of the year. A lot of sports are getting ready to come out, and a lot of sports as well are finishing up, getting close to it anyways. Baseball is getting into its fall classic. Football, basketball, and hockey are both on. All three of them are on the way as far as coming for another season. And sports cards is going to dictate a lot of what's going around as far as fan interest, because you not only have editions coming out in baseball with some of the rookies that may be very important to collectors, but also as well, you've got football, basketball, and hockey also coming out with cards of their own coming around. And who better to talk about sports cards than our good friend? He is the man behind one of the awesome shows that's out there. And I'll tell you what, if you're not catching this show, you're in the wrong, because if you're into sports cards, you got to check out That Sports Card Show podcast. It's available on virtually every major podcast format. It's my good friend. It is and a great supporter of the show, and I cannot thank him enough for doing so. It is VInce Autullo. Vince, thanks for coming back on.
Hi, Gerald. It's been a while since I've talked to you last, but there's been plenty of things that have still been happening in the sports card industry and hobby since then. I trust everything's been good with your show.
Everything has been good with the show. We just always love to tell you to go off on so many ranges of topics, but it always comes right back again to you, all the great things that you have going on with your show and all the great things that are going on in the sports card industry, including also some juicy topics later on that you're going to discuss, involving a scandal, because, everybody loves a good scandal.
Well, let's start out with what just wrapped up was the 40th National Sports Card Convention in Chicago. And I didn't go this year. I was on a podcast roundtable last year at it, but my wife had to pick the vacation destination this year, and it wasn't Chicago. So we did not go to that. But with all the social media and everything, so many people were tweeting and live streaming and YouTube videos of the National these days. It was almost like you were there. You could keep up with it through all the social media sites and everything. But it was a strong National from what I understood, and I don't know if it broke the attendance record like it did for like the past couple years, but if it didn't, it was right there. And I think maybe if it didn't, it might have had something to do with the venue. I don't know if maybe the venue was smaller compared to some of the other places, but it was a strong crowd there, to say the least. And one of the major attractions this year was a guy who is, maybe some of your listeners are familiar with, was Gary Vaynerchuk. He is a social media personality, investor, famous for being like an entrepreneur, early investor with Twitter and some of these Instagram. He was on the Rich Eisen podcast about 6-7 months ago, and he was talking about how big of a boom he sees in the sports card industry. And it seems like ever since then, he's made a huge wave in the sports card markets and industry of how he has like totally immersed himself in. He had actually a booth at the National, was there all 4 days selling cards. If you follow his Twitter feed, it's constantly him like selling cards, buying cards, talking to people that are into it. And, not coincidentally, he's also shared my podcast on his Twitter feed, which has almost 2 million followers.
Oh, that's great. Congratulations.
Yeah. Well, he was at the National buying and selling and taking pictures with anybody who wanted one, signing his cards. He has actually his own box of cards that are available. I think it was only available at the National, but you may be able to buy it from Topps directly now. And it's the Gary Vaynerchuk box. I think it has signatures. There's like a golden ticket in it where you can have dinner with Gary Vaynerchuk, and I think those are going for a couple $1,000s on eBay if you get one of those. And he has also opened up his own card store, and you can find it on Twitter at Edison Cards, where he's constantly buying and selling. And it's a big thing for a hobby like sports cards to have somebody who is this huge social media presence to just be like all in on sports cards.
And do you see that as a trend going forward with a lot of YouTube personalities becoming, celebrities in and of themselves, Do you see that as a trend for the industry to start following like the esports figures that are out there, some of them that are well-known celebrities or successful in the industry, Twitch streamers, YouTube streamers, start making cards of themselves, start having cards printed out for, of them and having them become part of the industry?
And that's a good question, but I don't see why not. I don't see why. I don't actually see why these e-gamers. Now there have been a few like these e-gamers that have had like autograph cards and certain releases, but there hasn't been like a real release just for those, and I don't see why there hasn't been. There's enough. If a major card producer wasn't interested in it, there's enough small time, smaller card producers that would, I think, that would jump at a chance to do something like that. I mean, those things would sell.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they.
I don't see why not.
I don't see why not as well. I think if you're talking about another venture for some of these, or another revenue stream, excuse me, for some of these
Yeah.
individuals and these celebrities, I can definitely see that happening. But it's great to see that sports card trading and sports card buying and selling is still alive and well, and that the largest sports card show of its kind is still very strong, very highly attended, and looking forward to hearing your thoughts. And hopefully you'll get a chance to go, if it's your turn to go on the vacation next year,
Yes.
and head out that way. But yeah, that's
I'm
very
already
exciting.
I'm already planning on going. It's in Atlantic City next year, and I'm going to try to do something special. I don't know what, but we're going to try to do something with it.
They've got to come to Vegas. They got to come to Vegas.
They don't go out to the West Coast. They seem to do East Coast and Midwest. It's Chicago, Cleveland, Atlantic City, Baltimore, kind of in that rotation.
Well, no
I
convention
don't
is
know why.
complete without coming to Vegas. That's all I'll say.
I know a lot of people have been clamoring for that. So who knows?
Who knows? Who knows
But
indeed. Go ahead, my friend. But you got me in suspense. So I got to hear what's going on with this National Card grading and trimming scandal that has piqued my attention.
well, we are still kind of in the early stages of this being broken and the news about this kind of coming out. This all started with just what I call internet sleuths. And we're in the age of the internet sleuth now, where people can go back and find out things that in the past there was no way of knowing or no way of finding out. So, what these guys have done, and this is all on blowout forums, message boards, right? If you really want to get in, because I'm going to do just like a cursory overview of this, because this goes deep. This has many tentacles that go out many, many ways, and there's no way we could really cover this in any kind of detail. So I'm just going to kind of give a cursory overview of it. But if you really want to find out and get into the nuts and bolts of it, go to the blowout forums, and there's threads there that are thousands of pages long. But anyways, let's get to it. Basically, what this is about is when cards are graded, they are looked over by professionals, and they're identified to see that the cards are authentic, that if there's autographs on them, the autographs are authentic, and the edges are just so, and the corners are just so, and then they grade them. And the difference between a low grade card and a high grade card sometimes can be thousands of dollars. And some of these really rare cards, it can be hundreds of thousands of dollars. The difference between something that's graded like a 1 and a 10. So what's been going on is people have been getting these lower graded cards, and let's say they might have just a little tiny nick on the edge, or a corner might be just not so. Well, they found ways to somehow trim these cards where they fit between there's kind of a way to trim them where they can't pick up on it or something. I don't know, but they're trimming off these bad edges, and they're resubmitting these cards into these grading companies, and they're grading them as much higher than what they should be. And these guys, these internet sleuths, have been able to do that because they've been able to pick up on this, because cards today have serial numbers on them. So let's say this card sold 2 years ago, and it was graded let's say a 6. Okay, well now we just see the same card with the same serial number, and all the imperfections that were on this card now are gone, and this card's graded a 10. And instead of selling for $500, it's now selling for $5,000. and this is going on in case after case after case. They're finding once they started digging, there was like, well, this is kind of a rampant problem. This goes deep, okay, and this goes into one of the main sellers on eBay. It was PWCC cards that a lot of these cards were coming out of. So I know that the FBI is looking into this. There's major car companies that are looking into this. It's got a long way to go before we come to any kind of resolution about this. But this has all been kind of found out just by regular hobby people who are just kind of keeping track of things now that they have so much technology at their disposal now, where they can actually find these things out and communicate with each other.
Well,
So
that's
that's kind of
very
where we're at.
well. That's very interesting, my friend. I'll tell you what. I can't wait to hear more on the scandal as the weeks and months to come get more and more detail. I mean, it's getting juicier all the time. Man, that's very interesting. I'm not too surprised by it because in this industry, as you've seen, even more than I mean, greed can come into play anytime you're dealing with collecting, whether it's sports cards or whatever type of memorabilia you've got. It definitely comes into play as far as trying to earn more, trying to get that extra edge, pardon the pun,
Yes,
as
right.
far as trying to get that extra edge and trying to get that extra little whatever dollar amount and raise the stakes even higher, so to speak. So that's very interesting, and we'll make sure we keep following it out there for everyone. But yes, definitely stick to and listen to that Sports Card Show podcast so you can get the latest and greatest on what's going on with this national card grading and trimming scandal. But my friend, I gotta ask you before we head on out. It's a couple more things. I want to ask you for this coming fall season, or even right now when it comes to the end of the baseball season, as we're getting closer to it, some of the hot cards that are being bandied about or being talked about. I know in basketball, and NBA is my background, my main love as far as sports are concerned, although I love them all. I can tell you right now, Zion is the hot name in the industry. But is there any other prospects out there that you're thinking of as far as people should go ahead and try and invest and collect right away?
Well, in basketball, really, there is no other name but Zion Williamson right now. He just signed an exclusive deal with Panini, so his cards, his autograph cards, will be in Panini products this year. And so he will have licensed NBA cards and Panini products. So that's kind of big for the market. That's because a few years back, the Ben Simmons had a year where his cards weren't licensed. His only autograph cards weren't licensed, and it kind of, I mean, while those cards are still valuable, it puts a weird spin on his collectibles. You know what I mean? So Zion Williamson will have autographed NBA licensed memorabilia and autograph cards this year in Panini products. Now, there's actually a Panini promo card it is a one of one that is on eBay right now that I'm watching, and it was a special card that was released in VIP packs at the National Sports Card Convention, and at the moment it's at about $6,000 with a couple hours left to go. So that tells you where the value is in the prospects this year in NBA. Is it
My
there in Zion?
goodness.
I mean, there's a couple other names, the John Morant and R.J. Barrett. Their stuff should be valuable too, but from what I'm seeing, it's Zion Williamson all the way. Now, let me ask you something. You're the basketball expert. This is this is me, just my take on it, and maybe it's a ice cold take. But is Zion Williamson just another Blake Griffin with maybe more muscles?
Well, he reminds me a lot of a little bit of an amped up version of Julius Randle because he plays a lot of bully ball. But if
Yeah.
I'm not sure where his outside shot is developing at this point in time. He showed glimpses of it in college, so I think that's going to be a key. His size, which gave him a great advantage in college, is not going to be as much of an advantage in the NBA. And that's the thing. He's going to go up against guys that are bigger, taller, and are able to go ahead and be just almost as athletic as he is. So we'll have to wait and see if the hype is going to be there, if his skills and his talent early on is going to match the hype, because I know everybody is talking about Zion this, Zion that, and obviously his cards are reflecting that. But again, is his skill that we saw that was so great in college going to be able to translate fully into the pros? I'm not 100% sure because
I'm not either.
He's not as tall as a lot of the individuals. He's about 6'8", 6'7", 6'8", and there's 6'9", 6'10", guys that are almost as strong and heavy as he is, and can basically keep him off the block as much as possible. But again, if he's coached correctly and he develops an outside shot, he does have a chance to become a premier athlete in the NBA. But again, that's a wait and see. We've got to see more than what we saw in college. He was able to bully everybody around and dominate in college without having to develop much of his exterior game. But if he does do that here in the NBA, watch out. Those cards could go even higher, and the value of them can go much higher as well. So I'm looking forward to that. But is there any other prospects in football or baseball that you're keeping an eye on? Because I know there has to be.
I've really been keeping my eye this year on baseball, and it seems like it's really kind of a special time in baseball where you're looking at the emergence of the new generation of not only stars but superstars from the prospect level up to this new rookie level. These guys that are called up and that are breaking records now. You've got maybe the big two, the big power two is Vlad Guerrero Jr. and Pete Alonso. You saw those two guys battle it out in the home run derby at the All-Star game. And those guys have continued. I mean, maybe Vlad Guerrero had a little bit of a slower start, but he's starting to hit his stride. And you've got Pete Alonso, who's breaking records with his home runs. And the thing about Vlad Guerrero, is when it's all said and done, he might not even be the best rookie on his team. He's got Bo Bichette, who was just recently called up, and he is on fire. He had something, I forget how many doubles. He had like 10 games in a row with a double or something like that. Forgive me, but I don't know the exact stat, but it was something very close to that, which is really amazing. And also out west, you've got Fernando Tatis Jr., and he's got to be a front runner for the National League Rookie of the Year. And Keston Hiura in Milwaukee, he has all the tools and the makings to be a real hitting machine, second baseman there in Milwaukee.
It's funny.
And
It's funny though how all these second generation players are coming along with Bichette, with Tati, and with Guerrero. It's funny how all of them are now coming out this year all around the same time.
that is funny. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, you're right. Those are all second generation guys. Maybe that has something to do with their maturity at such a young age to be able to handle the everyday of a Major League Baseball athlete. That's what kind of
Exactly.
grinds on these guys. And then there's also Jeff McNeil in New York, who's also an All-Star as a rookie. And when you're talking about prospects, the value in some of these prospect cards is absolutely amazing. You've got Wander Franco. He's a Rays prospect in their organization. Casey Mize in Detroit, Mackenzie Gore in the San Diego, and Joe Adele, the Angels, Luis Robert, Audley Rutschman, who was just recently drafted. All these guys, if you check out their cards, well, Rutschman I don't believe has any yet, but their first autograph cards, you better bring your wallet because you're going to pay close to four figures for some of these guys. Their low numbered, serial numbered autograph cards and these their Bowman first edition autos. It's crazy. Guys that have not played 1 minute in the major leagues, but people were banking so highly on them, their level of skill and success that they see them having at the major league level, that their cards are out of sight.
I'll tell you what, my friend, that's very interesting. I know there's a lot of great individuals out there that are coming up through the ranks that are going to be providing a lot of interest to sports card traders out there. But there's one card last I want to talk to you about finally before it's all said and done, and that is from Shane Bieber. And the reason why I say that is very good pitcher, having a very good year so far. Got to
Yes.
give him props for that. Got to give him props for that. But his card for this year would normally be that valuable, even though he's having a very good year. But something happened along the way that not only he was upset about, but had Topps apologizing as well.
Yeah, that was just a regular common card. It was his top stadium club card. And if you looked on the back of it, it had, instead of saying Shane, it said Justin Bieber. And if you find that card, you can actually get that card for $15-20 on eBay right now. But yeah, it's Justin Bieber. Now, how does that happen? How do you get an error where it says Justin Bieber? Was they at the printer and the guy was just listening to a Justin Bieber song and just got in his head? Or how do you make that mistake?
How do you make that mistake? But it happens on rare occasions. In fact, on the back, you look at it, it does say Shane Bieber on the top. And during this, in the description of it, in the paragraph about a little bit of a bio, so to speak, it does mention Justin Bieber in it. So it's kind of funny. And,
Shane actually put a picture of that card on his Twitter and tagged Topps in it. Now, it's just funny because it's just today. Shane Bieber, he's got the Topps error card, Justin, has filed for the trademark to not Justin with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office just today.
Amazing. That's not coincidental, I'm sure. And I love Topps's response because they understood their mistake. And of course, they had to respond in typical Bieber fashion. It's hard to say I'm sorry. So,
yeah, actually, Justin tweeted at Shane, and it says he told him that he feels like they have some kind of special connection. And the Cleveland Indians actually chimed in and said that they have a I'm Justin jersey ready for Justin Bieber if he ever wants to come and throw out a first pitch at a game.
Well, that's too funny. That's too funny indeed. Now it goes up even one step farther. But my question to you is, do you think that it will hold its value or increase any more as far as the Bieber card is concerned, or is it just too common?
I think it's probably too common, but I think it may depend on what kind of career Shane Bieber has. Now, if he goes on and wins 3-4 Cy Youngs, this will be a card people will want to have for their Shane Bieber collection. It'll be a error card that people will have to have. But, if he just has like a normal career, no Cy Youngs, and it'll be relegated to the dollar bin, I would say, in the future.
Fair enough indeed. Once again, I'm talking to VInce Autullo from That Sports Card Show podcast. You got to check it out today on all available podcast outlets. I got to ask you, before we head on out, why people need to check out your awesome show, That Sports Card Show podcast.
Because we've been on hiatus for a month or two, and we're about ready to come back. So that would be a good reason to check us out. We actually had an episode with a major league guy, and they were chopping down a forest next to my house with wood chippers and chainsaws, so I had to cancel it. So we're going to be coming back strong. So check us out, man. We're kind of just a sports card world, kind of a talk show more than anything.
Fair enough. That is That Sports Card Show podcast. It's been featured, like you said, on Gary Anderchuk's. That has to be a great honor for him to go ahead and mention your great podcast to all of his millions of followers out there. It is That Sports Card Show podcast. It is available now on all available podcast platforms. And again, I want to thank you for being so much of a supporter of our show and our program, my friend. It's always great to have you on the show. You got to come back sooner when you want to talk pop culture. You want to talk about sports cards. You want to talk about everything else in pop culture relating right here on the Pop Culture Cosmos.
Cool, man.